All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the conversation, the hidden variable unlocking ESG impact through financial wellness. My name is Kevin Drolet. I am the founder of Climate Hive, and I'm super excited to be here with Scott Ryan. He is my friend and the founder and CEO of Investature, which is a sustainable finance platform. Investature provides investment consulting, financial education, and finance and mission services to maximize the customer value of the employee-facing SaaS platform. Scott is also an investor advisor for climate tech startups and the Natural Resource Defense Council. Prior to shifting to the sustainability sector in 2024, Scott was an executive at Salesforce, Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, and Accenture. He received his material science degree from Johns Hopkins University and his MBA from the Stern Business School of NYU. So you are definitely in great hands in this conversation. And Scott, welcome. And I'm super excited about this conversation. Happy to have this with you.
Yeah, it's great to see you again, Kevin. And I appreciate the intro of being friends because we really just met under a year ago. The first time we met, it's a very different environment. No pun intended, but it was it was a sunny April day in San Francisco. I just walked like 2 miles through the beautiful streets of San Francisco to do a podcast with you, and it was our first time meeting. And we had a conversation that I think was meant to be 30 minutes and wound up being like 2 hours. And then today I'm here standing in my home in suburban New Jersey, and there's 18 inches of snow outside, right? But the good thing is that we're gonna have another great conversation. So looking forward to today, and thank you for inviting me. So I want to thank everybody for taking time out in your Wednesday, right? For most people, depending on what time zone you're in, this is the middle of your day. So this is a commitment so hopefully we'll make this interesting for you. I'm just going to give a very brief introduction about my company, and then mostly we're just going to talk about a theory of change. Right, so I'm going to walk you through a few slides for probably 5 to 10 minutes, and then Kevin and I are going to do Q&A, interviewer to me. Nothing is scripted. It's all meant to be a natural conversation, and then open it up to the floor. All right, so just why I'm here. So what Kevin talked about before is about 2 years ago, I shifted my entire professional life and really my personal life as well towards trying to solve the climate crisis yesterday. The main thing I do is I founded a company called Investature. And so just going to tell you a tiny bit about that, but mostly we're going to talk about some theory of change. So Investature is a startup company that's mostly a software platform around sustainable finance, geared towards individuals, but scaled through their employers. And it helps employers give their employees something they're dying for, which is help them live more sustainably through their work experience, and also give them levers to live more sustainably through financial education that their employer could choose to provide, and financial options through retirement plans and executive comp plans that employers could choose to give their employees and teach them about it. So that's what Investature is doing as our role in trying to solve the climate crisis. So let me tell you something from the seat everybody often has is when you think about sustainability and the environment, is it something that's charitable? Right? And something that's a necessity, or is it actually something that's good for business? Right? And so this is a poll from Deloitte Consulting. For people that don't know Deloitte Consulting, it's the world's leading human capital consultancy, right? It's one of the big four. And this is recent survey results from a poll of CEOs and board members from Fortune 500 companies and the largest private companies in the world. And they were asked, is sustainability a revenue driver? And if you look at these data points across left to right, the main benefit of sustainability is actually being good for business. In addition to other things you might assume, it's like a compliance thing. I need to report on it, right? Or it might feel good, but it might not actually be genuinely good, right? And that's when people might call it's greenwashing or marketing or other things. But the main benefit for business and having sustainability be part of business, when polling the most senior business executives and board members in the world, driving revenue. Now, one of the things that I believe in, and this is where everyone in the world is an individual, right? Some people are either currently an employee or were at some point and have had a boss at some point in your life. You might have one now. If you think about the data from before of like, what is sustainability good for? It's good for driving revenue for business. And then you ask employees, like, are they feeling that in their lives? They're not really feeling it, right? And so there's a big mismatch between what employers are doing at their company right, for what their company does versus are they actually bringing it into the experience of perhaps their biggest stakeholder, their own employees, right? How many companies have said, what is our greatest asset? It's our people. If sustainability drives revenue, then employees at a huge clip, more than 4/5 of employees want their employer to help them live more sustainably. Employers should do it, right? And so it's a missed opportunity for employers to bring sustainability to their employees and to do it beyond things that might have existed for 30 years. Go to a local forest or beach and clean up trash. Make sure there's recycling in the break rooms. That kind of thing is good. That's what was good 30 years ago. But the amount of evolution of facts and science today, that is by far not the most impactful thing employers can help their employees do. More impactful things is like giving them a subsidy for insulating their home, having heat pumps, commuter expenses so they don't drive, and giving them financial literacy to help them realize that your money's always been your greatest power. Did you know that your money is your greatest power to actually help the environment or other sustainability causes that you care about? So now take this picture, an iceberg. Think of it from like 3 different lenses. One lens is the world, the entire world, right? And so the income statement of the world would be like the gross global product, like the GDP of every country added up. And the balance sheet of the world is how much money and materials and time, what are all the resources the world has. You could also look at this to the very smallest view as for you as a person. Your own income statement is your income and your budget. And your own balance sheet is your current net worth. And then something in between would be an organization. This picture is to talk about at all 3 levels. So let me tell you the global view. The world's balance sheet, right? Resources, time, money, materials. The money, the world has about $800 trillion. It's a large dollar figure. $1 million is a large dollar figure. So is $800 trillion. Now, if you think about the time when there was a hole in the ozone layer, right? That was killing people in Patagonia. It was like an imminent threat to survival. The world solved that climate crisis in 2 years, where they pointed resources, money, policy, materials, and time to solve it. Today's climate crisis is nothing more than a resource allocation problem. And the resource people don't have enough awareness of, consciously at the scale, is the monetary part. People know, like, hey, policy is probably helpful. Me doing behaviors where I eat less red meat, I drive an EV or choose, like, look to drive a hybrid, change my energy sources. Those are behavioral things. But what your money's doing, people don't understand enough. And so the world has $800 trillion. To put the right financial allocation of the world's balance sheet to solve the climate crisis today is less than 1% of the world's money. The world solved the hole in the ozone layer in 2 years, right? If you just put 1% of the money to the most solvable problem in the world, we could solve it as a world, and you could also solve it as individuals. Part of that money is yours, right? And so part of today's conversation is how to know something and actually hold yourself accountable to doing something, not just point, this other person needs to do it. That you and your own personal finances, as well as those that you may influence of your employer, of your community, also have power. Now, when I think about this at an organizational level, the things that are below the surface for an iceberg, think of it on the income statement, and think about it for yourself, right? Everyone's a person. Everyone has a forecast for their own life of like, am I happy now? Am I gonna be happy? Part of happiness is health, shelter, community, and financial security. Part of happiness is also feeling like you are a responsible person and a good person. So think about today, your own expenses. And when you think your money's your power on the left side, your expenses, and then what they could be, hopefully, like, no one's perfect. I'm far from perfect for solving the climate crisis. I love flying places for business events, for travel. I'm always going to do that, even though airline emissions are like 2 to 3% of total emissions. That's something that I'm never going to be perfect for the climate for that. I have shifted my diet. I do drive an EV and a hybrid vehicle. My energy from home is sourced from clean energy, but I'm never going to be perfect. I've also always been intensely involved in finances since I was like a teenager. I had my own income. I invested my own money. I did socially responsible investing. What I didn't know until 2 years ago was that my banking and my investing is actually my biggest tool to solve the climate crisis. The metric to like the benchmark to realize for yourself is if your net worth is more than $75,000, investments plus banking together. The greatest tool you can do to solve the climate crisis is intentionally investing, intentionally bank. For every multiple above $75,000, that is that much more important your monetary choices are than your behavioral choices. I didn't know that myself. I changed banks once a year. I moved money 2 years ago to a green bank where I had a normal bank, where I had low interest, first I had high interest, horrible service. 20% of my banking money was being lent out to oil and gas. I didn't know it. Now all of my money, 3% interest, great customer service. All of it is being lent out to climate solutions. That same thing for a person can go to an organization, to a country, to the planet. And if you go back to the planet has $800 trillion. 1% is needed. 0.2% is allocated. So the 99.8%, if they were aware of their money, either banking or investing, is so powerful to solve the climate crisis. That's a huge pool that needs to just reallocate with intentionality. And the monetary part of solving the climate crisis, solved. Then it's just scale. Last thing, a lot of people always say, but won't I lose money if I invest in climate solutions? Won't I lose money if I divest from the fossil fuel economy? The answer is no. Right? So think about every investment ever made. None of them are guaranteed to have good financial returns. Who should you listen to about which investments to make? Experts. Experts like Investature and people we know can guide you to the actual investment and banking choices that give you good financial returns and good climate returns. Just listen to experts. Don't listen to your Facebook feed for financial advice. Listen to experts that actually know about the things that you care about, and then know that your banking money and your investing money is likely your greatest power as an individual or an organization to be more sustainable and have all those around you be sustainable. So here's a philosophical thing. And when Kevin and I met last time, I don't prepare for interviews too much because I just enjoy the conversation. He's like, and he has his podcast is called What Do You Solve? And when I walked in, I'm like, you know what I solve? I think I solve happiness. That was like a spur of the moment thing. But I actually believe that all of us are trying to solve for happiness every day. Right? And for me, right, happiness is when you need basic things, food and shelter and health. Once you have basic things, then it's space about community and impact. That's what brings happiness. And doing what you know you're supposed to do, right? What makes people not happy? Feeling guilty, like, you know what, I knew I was supposed to do it and I didn't. So all I want to do is help people bring happiness, but that happiness can be driven by more and more people know that the climate crisis is a major problem for them and the global community. If you didn't know this fact, 40% of the world's population lives somewhere that has had a climate weather event in the last 5 years. The climate problem of droughts, fires, flooding, hurricanes, brownouts, extreme temperature is real for the entire planet. We all need to solve it, right? But don't forget, like, oh, yeah, but those LA fires, like that was in the news cycle 3 years ago. The flooding in Pakistan, that was like 5 years ago. Can't be a problem now. Don't be dumb, be smart, right? You know it's a thing. Don't let your mind forget what matters and actually spend your time and energy, in this case, reallocate your money towards things that actually matter in the long run. Everyone's been taught since birth, your money is your power, voting is your power if you live somewhere where you can vote. Those are two universal truths. Your money will always be your greatest power for everybody. Voting for some people. Your money, how you spend it, but also how you invest it. Invest it for the world you want it to be. So there's some food for thought. And also listen to experts. Don't listen to just whoever's talking. All important decisions be made on what experts know. That's why we do research. That's why there's education. That's why there's science. Those are experts. All right. There's an intriguing intro for you guys. Kevin, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much, Scott. And definitely want to welcome everybody to just, pop whatever questions you have into the Q&A. That's we want to sort of open up the discussion. And Scott, so it's interesting, like thinking about this and your discussion, because there's personal and then there's like companies, right? And so in building for this event and engaging with people, we talk to a lot of companies and there's a question of what companies do, but on a personal level, it's also very personal, what people do, what they feel good about. And one of the questions that, for me, when we first had this discussion, was, well, what about risk? Like, because it seems like what people do with their money, the irony is that people do a lot of silly things with their money and are not very intentional. And at the same time, they're very risk adverse. And so I think when we open this discussion, redefining sort of this, conversation about investing and can you do this kind of investing, um, immediately what comes to people's mind is never done it before, risky. We're gonna let like the first million people do it, then I'm gonna come to it, right? Like human behavior. So I wonder
Yeah.
if you can speak to how Investiture, solves that, how you're addressing that, these things both on the personal, but also the for businesses.
Yeah. So one is everything that's new has a learning curve, just like the internet did, or just like electricity did, just like the internet did, just like smartphones do, just like Gen AI does. Right? Knowing that your money is actually your greatest source of power for helping a more sustainable world is probably a new thing for many people who are listening to this. Doesn't mean it's not a good thing and the right thing to do now and in the future, right? But don't treat it differently than any other thing that's like new information or a new consumption choice for you, right? Similarly, if I'm gonna break up banking from investing, because most people and organizations in the world have either a risk avoidance mindset or an opportunity mindset or a balance of the two. I'm going to say most people around banking tend to have a risk avoidance, right? Like that money needs to be safe and secure, right? And so I just need to make sure that if I need cash, my bank will give it to me. And then whatever else is like service. So in banking, right, I think a risk management mindset is great. And so when we recommend banking choices for individuals or companies, right, and we have some partners that are better for like corporate banking versus retail banking. Say, hey, what do you care about? Is your money safe? Yes, everything we recommend is FDIC insured. Second, what else do you care about? Interest rate, service, and then what you didn't know before is like what are your deposits lent to? So we add the awareness of what your deposits are lent to, and we point you to some banks that have good interest rates and good service, but they do not have the marketing budget of the global banks. So you haven't heard of them. But the money's FDIC insured. It has all the internet banking and ATM services that is 98% of everybody does. And now we tell people, hey, don't move all your money. Move some of it so that you can trust it. Risk avoidance, right? Move some of your money and then experience it. Did you see your monthly statement get the higher interest than you got before? For the banks that provide your impact next to your balance, look at it. Oh my God, I moved $10,000 in my money. They told me that that $10,000 per year is 10 cross-country flights in the United States not taken. I now actually see it in my financial statement from that bank, plus the greater interest, more interest, save 10 cross-country flights. For someone like me who travels the world, right, I'm on the road at least once a month. That is huge that I'm making a financial choice to not fly cross-country through my monetary decisions while my behaviors are polluting through air travel. Now take that to investing. Investing, more people, their emotions get excited for the high returns. I want NVIDIA. I want Tesla before Elon was crazy. I've had Apple forever, right? The return stories. Oh, I actually chose crypto and made a lot of money, or I chose crypto and I'm bankrupt. The return, the opportunity is what people think about for investing. And then the other thing that for investing is people typically, when they engage in investing, They want to also invest in something they care about. What they care about, that might be like a region. I want to invest in emerging markets. I want to invest in the tech sector. I want to invest in the airline sector. People have always chosen money in things that they care about, plus hoping financial return. That's an opportunity and intrigue. What we're trying to say is great. Your intrigue should also be, if you care about the environment or sustainability, but we're experts in the environment, right? And so there's two parts. One is when you're investing, invest for returns, because you should. Invest for opportunity, but realize there's an opportunity to either not pollute as much, which is called divesting. So screen out oil and gas companies, dirty industrial companies, and or invest into climate solutions. Put your money, equity or debt, into actual climate solutions and help them scale while you're still making them. So every individual and every company has a mindset of risk or opportunity or somewhere on the spectrum. It tends to tilt between banking or investing, but know who you are, know who your company is, and know wherever your mindset is, avoiding risk or taking opportunity, you can divest from the problem or invest in the solution. Both are better than what you're doing today. What most people are doing today is they're being zombies with their banking and their investing, and they're doing what everybody else does. And what that winds up resulting in is about 20% of your money is actively financing the climate crisis.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way to think about it, like the risk, where people take risk and then where they're, adverse to risk, actually, and separating the two. And clearly like there are green banks. And one of the questions from the audience is related to this, actually both points. Um, so there's a question if you can help with tactics, right? This participant has challenged her financial advisor to reduce investments into fossil fuels, and yet they fought back on returns. And then the second issue is that much of this is embedded into ETFs, mutual funds, and if you don't manage direct investing, how do you divest from certain things within a large firm?
Yeah, so I'll answer that's here. So one, whoever asked the question, I applaud you for talking to your current financial experts, right? Whether it's your banker or your financial advisor saying, this matters to me, right? I'd like to change some of my portfolio, and that everybody should do that. One thing my household started doing the last couple of years is we actually go to our bankers and our financial advisors and we say, can you give me this year's impact report for my money? Because I actually want to integrate that with like carbon footprint reporting that we've been doing for our behaviors. And it's like pressuring them to do better. Like they're part of your own family's supply chain, right? Just like the groceries you buy, the gas you may or may not buy, right? The things that get shipped to your house, that's all part of your own personal supply chain. That can be scaled up to an organization, a country, the world. Who provides your financial services part of your own financial supply chain? Ask them for the impact report of your money. Not what is their philosophy in their CSR reporting. What is the impact for your money? Pressure your financial supply chain to do that. Now, in terms of returns, the gumdrop chart, which I had earlier, which had this y-axis of financial returns and an x-axis of environmental impact. And I said all what Investor does is the top right. I didn't really like lean into that gumdrop chart, but experts know how to tell you what has both good financial returns and good environmental returns. What most financial advisors do is they do what their chief investment officer tells them. Most chief investment officers have not changed their philosophy on the investment recommendations they give to their customers for decades. I used to work at Morgan Stanley Merrill Lynch. I've gone back and talked back to the chief investment officers at those companies. They are not changing the way that they educate their financial advisors to then talk to their customers. That's a problem. Right now, there are other financial advisors that actually know about this for personal financial advice. And then everyone has a different lens, right? And so the two easiest lenses are divestment, which has existed for thousands of years, right? I don't want my money invested in sin. I don't want my money invested in oil and gas. Divestment investments are easy to make. They all have comparable or better financial returns, especially divesting from pollution. If you were to look at equity funds that screen out fossil fuel industries, performance on 1 year, 5 year, 15 years, it always exceeds the equity funds that include fossil fuels. Divesting is easy and it's a low expense ratio for mutual funds or ETFs. Investing, active investing, hand picking takes a little more effort. So like your expense ratio in the mutual fund's a little higher. But the impact side of investing in climate solutions is through the roof. Here's an example. Let's say you had an intermediate duration bond fund that almost every 401k plan, every pension, every financial advisor recommends to everybody. Different depth of investments in that, but almost everyone recommends it. Typically, it's investment grade corporate bonds. What does that mean? 20% of the money is actively polluting the world. What is the return? Normal, right? The credit rating is high. Return, depending on the year, might be like between 4 and 7%. Guess what? There are green and blue bond funds, which means green means investing in like reforestation. Blue bonds investing in reef development, cleaning up the oceans. They have the same credit rating, the same interest rate, but instead of 20% of your money destroying the climate, you're actually being the solution. You're funding the creation of reefs. You're funding the recovery of mangroves and getting the same financial return at the same credit rating. Experts like us bring those things forward. Those funds do exist. Those individual investments do exist.
One of the big questions is like, how do we do this, right? Like, because it seems very complicated, and somebody in the chat, which was the same thing as me, right? Like 401k, you're trained, set it, forget it, don't think about it. Hey, this is a beautiful thing. You just put a little bit
Yeah.
of money there, and then when it's time to retire, you got a big pool of money, and you got some financial advisor that's making sure that you do everything right. And I think that that is one of the challenges, right? Is like, uh, okay, we're gonna do something different. And so does it take a long time? And so, where do we go? So one of the questions here I just, think would be good to speak to is where can investor get reliable information? You talked about experts. Can you talk a little bit about, what Investiture is doing? Like how does the platform work? How does the education work for individuals, for businesses? Help us understand, is this super complicated? Is it not as complicated as we think? Um,
Yeah. So for banking, it's easy, right? So that's why I lead with banking because I do sessions like this more than once a month, right? And for banking, I always lead with that because everybody can take action that night, right? And the website we steer people to is go to the Bank Green website. It's a nonprofit. Enter your current bank. It'll tell you how much of your deposits get lent out to climate destructive things. And then it'll say, hey, if I want to move my money and I care about these things, I care about FDIC insurance, I care about gender equity, or I care about climate, here's the best recommendation they have for you. And they'll list the interest rate, the customer service reviews, and how you open an account. Right. And so I encourage people to move their money right away in banking, some of it, just so you start feeling it and you start going from being educated on something you might learn today, or what I'm telling you today might be the second or third time you've heard it. And then you actually take action. Right. And then through that action, you experience it versus so many people learn something and then get distracted from taking an action that action will actually make them happy. Right. So on the banking, I start with that.
mm.
Financial advice. So I've been involved in wealth and asset management for 30 years, right? Financial advice is very personalized, right? You need to know basic things that are legally mandated, which makes sense for them to be, which is like what's your risk tolerance, your time horizon, your comfort with investing, right? And so telling you the answer in a group call is not possible because it doesn't actually logically make sense. It's also regulated to not do it, but it just doesn't logically make sense. Everyone in this call has a different risk tolerance, time horizon, life events, interest in investing. Right. But then part of what makes sense is to say, hey, I actually deeply care about X. Right. And so what Investiture does is we do through sessions and through technology, we allow you to enter, these are the other things I care about. And they would say, great, based on those and your current investments, this is what we would say you should consider doing instead. Highly personalized to you in the context of what your employer supports. Right. Now, everybody who has an existing financial advisor, it is your job to tell them what you care about. Right? It's your money. Your money is your power. You shouldn't just walk into a session with a financial advisor or go to a self-directed brokerage platform and just let it tell you what to do. Just like any other thing, if you go to a restaurant, you don't sit down and say, give me whatever you feel like. You say, this is what I want. Be an advocate for yourself with your current professionals. And if they are dissatisfied, then come to someone like me and I'll give you a better choice. Right? But be an advocate for your money. And then in the context of like employers, I call it like zombie money, but employers, 60% of Americans' greatest source of wealth is their retirement plan through their employer. Those same 60% of Americans, some of which may be on this phone call, but also globally, retirement savings is the greatest source of wealth. It varies by country and person. People look at it for 10 minutes a year. That is a financial engagement and a financial literacy travesty. Right? And that's someone who's been working in wealth and asset management for 30 years. If I was a financial advisor and my clients looked at their portfolio 10 minutes a year, why do I even have a business? All I'm doing is taking their money. Look at your money with intentionality for the things you care about and engage with it. And the more you look at it, the more you'll be, one, financially literate, two, intentional and responsible, and three, hopefully happier, right? You're controlling your own life's destiny. And you'll be happier that, like, you know what, my money's not just sitting there on autopilot. I actually learned that it could be impactful. And now I spoke to people who could help me move it, and you start being impactful too.
Yeah, it really is crazy. I mean, 10 minutes. I mean, we probably look longer at our grocery receipt, right, than we do at our retirement plan and where that money is going with intentionality. Did I pay too much for this? Um, One of the questions that's come up here is with employers, right? So my largest pool of money is with my retirement plan, and it may be the biggest impact to climate. So I'd start there. That said, it's hard to convince my organization to make changes affecting thousands of employees and involving advisors, trustees, fiduciaries, and investment fund providers. How can you help us navigate this and get them to offer climate-aligned investment options?
Yeah. So let me do two things. Let me one talk outside of my area of expertise, and then talk into my area of expertise. So there's a couple of organizations called Work on Climate being one that's a nonprofit, another one called the Employee Action Network. These are both global, where they're communities of employees that want to be activists to help their employer help them live more sustainably. Right. Some of those things might be like, commuter benefits or a subsidy to get a heat pump, right? But basically to have employees brainstorm around the world. These are the things that I want as an employee from my employer, and then how do I position them, right? Now, when it comes to 401k choices, there's three things to deal with. One is that 1/3 of 401k plans have what's called a brokerage window, where basically, just like if you have an individual account or like a rolled over account, you can invest in anything you want, not just the 15 choices that you, right? So one, you're not taught that. But when it's there, you actually need to look for it and then use it. And so you actually have choice to invest in anything you want at 1/3 of the employers in the United States. Second is that the people that control the investments is not the platform you log into, right? So if you're at the workplace and you log into TIAA or Empower or T. Rowe Price or Fidelity or Vanguard, Vanguard doesn't control the investment choices you're doing. Your people leaders do. The head of HR chooses them, right? They have legal responsibility to be giving you investments that are in your own best interests. It's called being a fiduciary. Now, fiduciary, I'm going to say this one more time, right? It's in your own best interests. What that has meant since the dawn of time, right, is fiduciary, whether it's like someone who has a trust officer, that's what fiduciary is, or someone who's a fiduciary for your retirement plan, or someone who's a fiduciary for your home's assets or the estate plan or anything. That's what fiduciary means. You're supposed to act in the best interest of somebody else. Right? The best interest behaviorally have always been the lowest risk, most simple investments. Now, if you think about like myself, my number one cause I've cared about since birth is the environment. My best interests is for my money to be good financial return and helping the environment. I want you, the HR leader, as my fiduciary, to act in my best interests. That's what fiduciary actually means. Your interests are a mix of financial return for financial things and what else you care about. What employers are failing at is actually doing, right? And so what employees need to do is they build a business case of like, this is how many, like me as an individual, but you and a pool of your colleagues. That's what the Work on Climate Employee Action Network do. You say, all of us believe this is in our interests. Please give us more options, right? As organizations like myself, but also like I'm a for-profit institution, but we're very mission driven, right? We're global. Those are global too, right? But we help you build the business case to fight for what's in your best interest so that you can then move your money. But also the employer needs to know it's in their interest. Why do employers offer retirement benefits? To attract and retain talent. If you, that's it. Most in the United States, employers spend 6 to 8% of their total costs on employees on retirement benefits and the match. Employees look at it 10 minutes a year. Your employers are wasting their money for the reason they offer you retirement benefits. 10% of 10 minutes a year of engagement for 7% of the cost of the employee, that's a waste of money, right? You then talk to your employer in that context. Like, one, I'm going to advocate for myself because it's in my interest to have either divested investment options or investment in options in climate solutions. Two, I want that brokerage window. Three, by the way, you're doing nothing to retain me as talent. You're spending so much money in this. Like, why don't you actually get value out of it? Right? There's a lot of different ways to talk to the stakeholder, to advocate for yourself, but also to talk in their own language. And that's how you drive change.
Do you believe there'll come a point where companies are required by regulation to measure and report the finance emissions of their retirement plans?
I don't think it matters, is my short answer. Right? One, everyone is a citizen of the world. The climate problem is a global problem. Everyone in the world lives in different government jurisdictions. Some people have municipal, state, national. What is required in any of those jurisdictions is constant changing. Right? And if you live in the United States, things that are happening from your federal government are changing at a rate never seen before. Right? Depending on policy to do what's in your interests, I don't think is the best use of time. Vote. Do what like everyone can do. Vote towards policy, right? Speak up your voice at employers. But that the climate needs action yesterday, right? So don't wait for it. Take the action that you're learning about today now. Right. Now, secondarily, does that mean I think it's not useful to have a policy that says it's mandated for finance emissions to be required? I think it's absolutely necessary. I think it's absolutely important, but I don't think people should wait for it. Right. And then I'll give you historical context. Right. Organizations had not reported climate impact ever with any quantifiable data until 25, 30 years ago. Right. And it started voluntarily through the Climate Disclosure Project called CDP. I might have the wrong words, but it's CDP. And they're like, why do we do this? Because our stakeholders care, our customers care, our investors care, our employees care. They started voluntarily reporting just to give it a try because people care, right? That same concept, right, was then evolved into what's called the Global Reporting Initiative. It was the first global framework for reporting sustainability impacts. And this framework was the second foundation after CDP. It preceded the greenhouse gas protocols. It preceded all the regulation in Europe. It preceded regulation in California, regulation in Japan and Australia. Basically, it said, so there's a business construct called you get what you measure. So what the Global Reporting Initiative framework was, try your best to measure everything from whatever you can figure out. If it's large, let's try to fix it. Now, when you think about, now I'll give you an example, right? So Investature's business model is perfect for what we call the knowledge industry, which is organizations that they don't produce anything physical, and they have well-educated, well-paid employees, which means they have a lot of money. So the knowledge industry is like universities, Silicon Valley companies, professional services companies like law firms, medical practices, management consultants. Wall Street companies, the health industry, right? They don't produce anything physical. All of those organizations tend to have well-educated employees. well-paid employees. If you teach a well-educated person to do something, they're more likely to do it if it makes sense. And when they do it, moving their money, it actually has a massive impact. Now, all of those sectors, to go back to Kevin's question, on average, if you measure the emissions, that's called the financial supply chain or the finance emissions from their retirement plans, take out financial services, but include professional services, higher education, high tech, health, it is by far, by an order of magnitude of at least 10 times more emissions, like greenhouse gas emissions, than anything else that any of those companies are currently taking into account and reporting. Whether it's what's called scope 1 and 2, which is like indirect control, or scope 3, which is indirect control. This becomes an indirect control of the financial supply chain, the retirement plan that they're choosing to offer their employees, and then often matching on it. So like increasing the impact. That indirect influence is for those kind of sectors is 10 times more than everything else currently being suggested to be reported by the greenhouse gas programs. Right. But if you go back to what matters for stakeholders and the CDP, they should be reporting what matters to their stakeholders, including their employees. And global reporting initiative, you get what you measure things that are big and fix them. It's big and it's fixable. It should just happen. I don't care about the policy regulations in each sector. It's big. It can drive business value and it can drive planet impact. It should just happen.
I think it'd be good if you can talk about, because you've talked a lot about employees and employee benefit, right? And
Yeah.
employee retention. So one of the narratives of investiture is for companies is look, if you take these steps, you're actually going to have, better employee retention, you're going to hire, better talent. And I did want to like almost like push back a little bit or kind of ask you because when I think about like do employees really at the end of the day do they care or are they looking at like you know are they just because if they're only looking at their 401k for 10 minutes a day like do
Yeah.
they really care about this stuff? Is it really going to improve employee retention? So I wanted to ask you to kind of speak about that, not
Yeah.
just to agree with you, but convince me, that actually it is a employee benefit.
Yeah. So let me maybe I'll tell a story. Right. So I'm 51 years old as of last month. I've had five major employers in my life. I worked for Accenture, Morgan Stanley Wealth Management, the institutional side of Bank of America, Salesforce, the company, and now Investature the last 2 years. What I've always cared about the environment as my number one cause, right? But I also care about, am I getting paid well? Do I like my manager? Do I believe what my company does? Until I worked for a company that is like universally reviewed as a great place to work versus a perfectly fine job. I didn't realize how important it was to bring like in the battle for talent for like doing things that matter to the employees. Accenture was a fine company. Morgan Stanley is a fine company. Bank of America is a fine company. None of them ever winning great place to work on a global. They get like reviewed fine. Like, and their goal is to be slightly better than their peers. I pursued the company Salesforce because it was winning great place to work on a global scale in the top 10 for like 15 straight years. And I'd been around long enough where I was like, hey, I know what matters to me the most is like loving my employer. And then when I went there, I was like, what? But like, I still don't like, I was working at all these companies that are world class, but I'm now at a place that's like universally known to be a great place to work. And for the first year, I'm like, this is a cult and I'm skeptical. But I was there for 6 years, right? And they do things like encourage you to volunteer during working hours, give you 1% of your paycheck to be given to charity, right? Feed you for charitable ideas and help you do pro bono work for organizations that are in causes you care about. They have an employee resource group with 40,000 employee members called Earth Force for people that believe in solving the environmental crisis. Salesforce, when they would post jobs as being a great place to work, and they were also, while I was there, the world's leading solution in the 6 major solutions they had as reviewed by Gartner Group. So they were the best solution and a great place to work, right? And their stock price was going great, right? Now, going back to why does it matter for employers? When the voluntary attrition rate of Salesforce, like who left because they were frustrated, was like historically low in a business school case study. When they had job openings, there were, I think, on average 400 applicants per opening. Think of it as like it's like the Harvard. If you view like Harvard as like or Princeton or like one or Stanford is like the best school because it's prestigious and people want to be there. They created a culture of being a great place to work and then became the most in demand and they had the least voluntary attrition. And then when people left voluntarily, they brought the Salesforce great place to work principles, they call it the 1-1-1 model and all these other things to their next employer and launched all these other companies that then propagated that. A lot of things that people call today like B Corps, which is companies that in their mission, they actually have certain value systems that are in the articles of incorporation, right? Versus at the whims of the current CEO, right? And so like that kind of culture is very healthy, right? And a good thing. And so if you think about today versus 30 years ago, people used to work at an employer for 20 years, right? In my generation, most people worked at an employer on average 5 to 6 years. In the current generation, people tend to stay in a job for 2, right? So at the employer's lens, they need to do everything they can to retain talent because it costs money to recruit people and it costs money to train people so they're even effective in their jobs, right? If you're blowing money away to recruit them and to train them and they leave within 2 years, you are not going to survive as a company, right? And so the normal things that people have cared about since the dawn of time about why do they stay is pay, do I like my boss or my team? Those things will always universally be true. But there's so many other levers that make it a great place to work that you should bring into the workplace that will be impactful as well.
Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely I worked for careerbuilder.com and it was like my first corporate job, but you just, you drink the company Kool-Aid, but they did a lot of things that enriched you, right? And so hey, we're going to be making the world a better place. That theme when it runs throughout, you want to hang in there like with the company. I definitely see that. Um, I know that we're getting close on time, so I just wanted to encourage if anybody, has, questions, burning questions, please put them in. Also, I'm putting some links in the chat. I'm going to put Investiture's link in here too. But Scott, how do people get a hold of you? What's the best way to get in touch with Investiture? And then we'll do a couple more questions.
Well, I'm formerly 6'5", so if you ever see me on the street, I'm easy to see. And I tend to like engaging in conversation. But assuming you're not just going to bump into me at a conference or on the street, the easiest way to talk to me or my team is easiest lift is like follow us on LinkedIn, right? And follow me on LinkedIn. And you're just like, if this things we're talking about today intrigue you, we tend to post thought leadership frequently, and then you can just learn more, right? And go from learning to taking action. The second way that's a little deeper is on our website. There's a contact us form, right? So on investiture.com, contact us, fill it out, and we'll have the appropriate person in the company reach out to you, right? And answer your questions and guide you towards whatever you're looking for. So those are the two best ways. And then the third thing is I'm talking at a crowd because this is Kevin and I talking with some questions, right? But we're far from perfect, right? And so like I want to learn too, right? And like the amount that like I've been in financial services for 40, not 40 years, all my professional career, I didn't learn about intentionality in my banking and intentionality to like invest in solutions in my investing until 2 years ago, right? And I've been working in financial intentionality for a hell of a long time, right? So I'm still learning greatly. So I know a lot of what I'm trying to teach others is also learning for you, but we still don't know everything. And some people have been doing this longer than Investor has, right? But we also have a lot of people that support us who've been in the sustainability movement for a long time. And I'll say this, most of the sustainability movement, especially on the environment side, has been around climate's a problem, right? It is. But moving your money is a solution for your own health, your own happiness, your own financial returns, and for the climate, right? People will always talk about it being a risk because it'll be the news cycle for the next forest fire, the next flood, the next drought, the next superstorm. You can take action now and tomorrow yourself and the people you influence to be part of the solution where it takes just a few hours of your year to move some of your money in banking, move some of your money in investing, versus let me look at the packaging of everything I buy everywhere I go. That's hours per week of effort that has lower impact.
Who do you want to hear from? And I want to just also say briefly for those that are here is that Investature does an amazing, like this conversation can be taken to organizations. So, and Scott has actually many more slides and information, but Investor does an amazing education that will leave people going like, wait, what? And it's much like this where we're just opening up and we're learning things we haven't learned, or understood before. So if for any organizations that want that, please contact us or you can get in touch with Investor. And then there's some deeper also dives than just beyond the education. But a question here is who does Investiture want to hear from? People interested in making individual climate positive changes or organizations? And then can you give us an example, like from an organizational standpoint, like who Investors helping?
Yeah. So it's funny. So when I started Investiture, my theory of change was teach people that their financial emissions of their financial supply chain is huge, and then like figure out the rest later, right? And this like concept of carbon accounting. And what we've learned in our journey is that the educational part, whether to individuals or to organizational decision makers, is actually the most important step, right? And so I want to hear from anyone who's actually wanting to change their behaviors, right? Because it's movement building, right? And I've never like my parents grew up in the 60s, right? And that was like the social justice hippie generation, but that was like movement building. And I've never thought of myself as being that kind of person, the kind of person that's gonna like march in the streets and demand whatever. Um, and the more people I talk to, the more where I see them light up. So I'll give an example. Like I go to this conference I'm going next week. I went last year called Green Biz. It's really the world's leading sustainability experts in the corporate sector. And I spoke about, did you know your financial supply chain is your greatest source of emissions and you can fix it? And some of the things I talked about, people literally like they were taking out their phones, going to the Bank Green website and starting to move their money that day. Right. There was a similar conference called the Higher Education Climate Leadership Summit. A woman who'd been working at Morgan State University, right? One of the historical Black colleges in the University of the United States, in justice for 40 years, right? And I told her about this, and she like went on her phone, tried to move it, and then the next day I was like speaking on a panel, and she was like waiting outside the room, waiting to talk to me. She's like, I lost the website on my phone, and like I'm so pissed. I need to move my money so that my money's making a difference tomorrow, right? And so then like me seeing people who want to realize this is something they can do, and they want to take it over the finish line. That's what inspires me. And so I just want to talk to anybody, individuals or organizations or both, that actually want to make the best use of their money and time to have the best impact for their money and time. It's a movement.
Fantastic. Well, I'm down. I'm down with your movement. I am going to march into my financial advisor. But well, we're at our hour. Scott, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody that came.
Kevin, great to do this again. Let's put it on the calendar for another year from now and talk about whatever we're up to then. And thank everybody for sharing part of your Wednesday with us. I really appreciate it.